it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. In tonight's story, we head deep into the wild heart of Wyoming, to the small, wind-bitten town of Dubois, where a retired cop named Bruce thought he'd left danger behind him for good. But when a local farmer reports something tearing through his livestock, Bruce's quiet life starts to unravel. The tracks don't match any known predator, and the attacks grow more violent, more deliberate. As Bruce follows the trail into the high country, he realizes this isn't the work of an animal at all, or at least not one that should exist. What he finds buried in those mountains will test everything he thought he knew about fear, justice, and what still hunts in the dark corners of Wyoming. I'm a retired Wyoming cop, and this is my scariest story, by Augustus Cordoba. Part 1. The town of Dubois, Wyoming, sits quiet between the Wind River Range and the red cliffs that cut the horizon like old scars. On paper, it's just another ranch town. One main street, a couple of diners, a feed store, a post office that still smells like dust and paper ink. When the wind comes down from the mountains, howling through the cottonwoods and rattling the tin roofs, it feels like the edge of the world. Out here, silence isn't peaceful. It's a warning. Most of the locals keep to themselves. Ranchers, mechanics, a few old miners who never left after the boom died out. People who understand that in this part of Wyoming, help can be a long way off, and sometimes the things that happen in the dark don't make it to the morning news. The sheriff's office runs out of an old brick building that used to be a bank, the kind of place where the walls hold more secrets than files. Nights in Dubois stretch long. The cold comes early, creeping down from the peaks before the sun's even set. By the time the stars roll in, the whole valley feels swallowed up by shadow. Coyotes scream somewhere past the ridge, and every so often you'll hear something else. Something heavier, slower. It doesn't sound like it belongs. That's the kind of place it is. Quiet town tucked between the wilderness and whatever's left of civilization. The kind of place where a man could vanish into the hills. And no one would ask too many questions. Just shake their head, mutter something about the wolves, and lock their doors a little earlier that night. The name's Bruce. Used to wear the badge, but now I hole up in a rust-bitten trailer a few miles past the edge of town. Not because I can't do better, because I don't want to. There's a quiet out here you can't buy, and a stillness that seeps into your bones if you sit long enough. Well, the lake helps too. Best damn fishing you'll find without burning half a tank. Some mornings I park myself by the water with a thermos of burnt coffee and a line in the lake, watching the fog crawl over the surface like it's hiding secrets. For a while, everything feels right. Close enough. The place ain't much, but it's mine. The trailer rattles when the wind kicks up and leaks when it rains, but I patched it myself. Replaced the siding, fixed the roof, rewired what the last idiot had burned out. Most folks here don't bother. They just let the rot set in. But not me. I need the work. Keeps my hands busy, keeps my head quiet. Reminds me I'm still good for something. 25 years on the force, and I thought I'd walk away feeling like I'd built something. Like the town would miss me. Turns out, once you hand in that badge, you're just another name in a drawer somewhere. The pension barely covers groceries, and the nights get too long if you let 'em in. Sometimes I catch myself watching things happen. Someone yelling, someone in trouble, and the old instinct kicks in. I still want to step in. I still want to make it right. So now, I fix what I can. Broken fences, busted pipes, a washing machine that rattles like gunfire. Mrs. Leary in Lot 7 calls me every time her porch decides to collapse again. Joe's trailer nearly blew away in a windstorm last spring. I nailed it back together. People pay me in beer, cash, or gratitude. It doesn't matter which. It's a thank you that sticks. Yeah, I miss the job. Miss the weight of the uniform, the way people straightened up when I walked by. Miss feeling like I mattered. But mostly I miss being needed. Out here fixing busted things for folks just trying to survive. Well, it's the closest I can get. These people need someone who still gives a damn. I keep it simple. Up before sunrise, knees cracking, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. If no one's got a busted pipe or a blown fuse, I grab my rod and head down to the lake. Sometimes I just sit on the steps, watch the shadows crawl across the grass while the world burns itself out trying to go faster. Everyone's always chasing something, even here. But not me. I like the quiet, the slowness, the space between things. The morning air carries a smell you can't fake. Wet dirt, pine needles, and something else that cuts deep like memory. Takes me back to being a kid, following my granddad down to the river. He'd hand me the tackle box, let me tag along while he fixed the fence line. "A man ought to take care of what's his," he'd say. And that stuck. Still does. People around here say I don't talk much. They're right. Words are cheap. I listen instead. Folks show up, sit on my steps, spill what's weighing on them. Broken families, bad luck, nights they can't sleep through. I just nod. Maybe offer a word or two if it feels right. Most of them don't need answers. They just want to know someone's hearing them. This world's got plenty of noise, but not enough ears. So that's me, Bruce, ex-cop, fixer, fisherman. Not out looking for any kind of mess, just keeping the gears turning one rusted bolt at a time. But trouble, yeah, trouble's like smoke. You can quit chasing it, but it'll find the cracks and drift your way. I was working on Brad's fence that afternoon, sun beating down, when I heard the old truck grinding up the gravel road. Oh, it sounded like death coughing through rusted pipes, the kind of rattle that said nobody's touched the engine since Clinton was in office. I set down my hammer, wiped the sweat off the back of my glove, and looked up. The truck wheezed to a stop just past my trailer. Out jumped Greg Vindini, farmer. 30 acres of stubborn land past the tree line. Oh, the man looked worn to the bone, eyes sunken, shirt streaked with dirt, boots caked up to the ankles. Not blood, just sweat, soil, and something heavier. Worry, maybe. The kind that sticks to a man and won't wash off. "Morning, Bruce," Greg said, tipping his faded cap. "Morning. You good?" I asked. He gave a half-hearted nod, eyes flicking toward the busted fence I was working on. "I didn't mean to get in the way. Just figured I'd stop by on my way back." "No trouble," I said, setting the hammer down. "Yeah, what's going on?" Greg shifted his weight, boots grinding in the dirt. His hand came out of his pocket, scratched the back of his neck, a nervous tick I'd seen before. "Well, had something happen last night. 3 of my goats got torn up." He hesitated then, his eyes dark. "I thought it was coyotes at first, but no, not like this. They were shredded, Bruce. Pieces scattered all over hell." Coyotes don't play with their food," I said quietly. "Well, they go for the throat, one clean kill." We nodded at this. "Yeah, well, these weren't clean. One of them was dragged damn near half a field away from the others. Looks like it had been pulled by something strong. And the tracks..." He trailed off, squinting like the image was still burned into his head. I waited. Too deep. Too strong. Too wide. Not a dog, and sure as hell no boots, he said finally. "I've been on that land my whole life, Bruce. I know what prints look like. And these, they ain't right." I stayed quiet, just listening to the hum of the wind and the slow ticking of his truck's engine cooling behind us. Greg leaned against the door and let out a long breath. "Probably just riled up over nothing. Could be some big dogs someone dumped out here. Lord knows folks do that all the time." "Yeah, could be," I said. "Call animal control?" He barked a short laugh. "Closest thing we got is Duncan from the feed store. That man couldn't chase a squirrel if his life depended on it. Look, I know you're not a cop anymore, but you always had a knack for figuring things out. But maybe you could take a look. I'll set my mind straight." I wiped my hands on a rag, slowly and deliberately. Yeah, I'll come by later, this afternoon." His shoulders dropped then, tension leaking out. Appreciate that, Bruce. Really do. Climbed back into his truck, engine coughing before it roared to life. The sound echoed off the trees as he rolled down the gravel road, kicking up a ghostly trail of dust that hung in the sunlight. I stood there for a long moment, watching it fade. Now, something about it didn't sit right. Not the goats, not the prints. The way he said, torn up. Like he'd seen something he couldn't explain. By the time I packed up and drove out to his place, the sun was low and bleeding red across the pasture. Greg was waiting by the barn, one hand shading his eyes. He waved me over, quiet, then led me past the fence and out behind the goat pen, toward the open field where the grass grew darker, heavy with the smell of blood and dirt. "Yeah, right over here," Greg said, his voice low. "Happened just past that thicket." He walked without a word, our boots crunching through the brittle grass and dry dirt. The air hung heavy, and it was too still, too quiet. Even the trees up ahead looked wrong somehow. There was no wind, no bird song, just silence thick enough to choke on. Greg pointed toward a patch of ground near a half-rotted stump. Found the first one there. Others were further out. I crouched, fingers brushing the dirt. Blood, dark and crusted, stained the soil. Tufts of coarse fur stuck to the ground like it had been glued there by something violent. Whatever did this hadn't eaten, it just tore, shredded for the sake of it. The grass was matted down in a dragline, like something heavy had been pulled across the field toward the hills. I followed the trail step by step. Every few yards, more signs. A scrap of hide, bark gouged from trees. And then I spotted it. 4 clean claw marks slashed into a young sapling, deep and deliberate. I laid my hand beside them. But each groove was nearly the width of my fingers. No coyote did this, no dog either. I didn't say a word, just kept following the path until it vanished through a tight break in the brush, climbing toward the rocky ridge that loomed over the pasture. The dirt there was chewed up. Big prints, sunk deep, space too wide for anything local. Whatever it was fast and heavy. When I circled back, Greg was kneeling near another blood patch, working a toothpick like it might solve something for him. "Yeah, you find anything?" he asked, his voice tight. "Trail goes up toward the ridge," I said. "I'm going to take a look. Won't be long." He stood, brushing dirt off his jeans. "All right, I'll come with you, but I got to check on the cows before dark. One's due a calf." Go on. Just tell the neighbors to keep their pets inside, livestock too. Lock up the coops and pens till morning." His jaw tightened at this. Think it'll come back?" I met his eyes for a second and then looked past him toward the ridge. "Better to be careful," I said. Greg nodded slowly. "All right, Bruce. You be safe up there." The sun was dying behind the trees now, the sky turning the color of blood and rust. I watched him drive off and shifted my eyes to the trail winding up the ridge. That's where the truth was hiding. And the climb was rough, steep in places, the dirt loose and dry underfoot. Rush clawed at my jeans and the air hung heavy with that thick, dying heat that comes before nightfall. The sky was burning gold, streaked red along the horizon. I moved slowly, careful. Years on the job teach you how to move quietly when it counts. Step, stop, listen, step again. The trail was easy to follow. Torn grass, snapped twigs, crushed soil. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. Feathers scattered like snow, clumps of fur snagged on branches. Bark stripped raw from tree trunks, as if something big had slammed through without a second thought. Or maybe it wasn't thought at all. Maybe it was anger. Then came the smell. Thick, sweet, wrong. The kind that hits the back of your throat and dries your mouth before you even know what it is. Not death, older than that. Something foul had settled in. I followed it around a clutch of boulders into a shallow hollow, and that's where I saw it. The deer, or what was left of it. Its insides were spilled across the dirt, ribs jutting out white and clean like sharpened steaks. The spine was twisted so badly it made my jaw log just looking at it. Well, the head was gone. Not cut, but torn away, flesh shredded where the neck used to be. One leg missing, the other stretched like it had tried to run mid-death. I crouched beside it, the flies circling thick, humming like static, but I barely noticed. The prints around the carcass were the same as before, wide, deep, and heavy. Something big, something that didn't move like it should. Then I saw the dip in the ground a few feet ahead. A small pit, maybe 2 feet deep, half covered in brush and broken branches. It looked like a den, but too big for a fox, too wide for any coyote I'd ever seen. I stepped closer, my boots crunching softly, and peered over the edge. And that's when I saw them. Bones. Part 2. Bones. All kinds of bones. Small, cracked, gnawed clean. Some animal, some maybe not. And a few that looked too long, too straight, too human to belong here. It was a hand, human, what was left of one anyway. Skin clung to it in dried leathery strips, the color of old paper. The fingers were curled in, stiff and claw-like, frozen mid-reach, like whoever it belonged to had tried to hold on to something before the end came. Another hand lay close by, twisted the wrong way. And deeper in that pit, more pieces, a wrist bone, a chunk of jaw still holding a few yellow teeth. I stepped back slowly. My heart wasn't hammering yet, but something cold crawled up my spine, a deep, hollow kind of fear, the kind that whispers instead of screams, the kind that tells you the world's gone sideways. This wasn't right, none of it. As soon as I saw that hand, I knew this was connected. There'd been talk for months, people going missing out this way. Never made the papers, not really. Wrong kind of victims, drifters, campers, folk who lived far too off the main road to make noise when they vanished. Well, you'd hear it in gas stations, over a counter at Lynn's Superfoods, drinking coffee at Cowboy Cafe. You hear about that hiker that went missing last month? Yep, never found his truck. Well, most folks shrugged it off, just stories. But I wasn't shrugging anymore, not after seeing that pit. Whatever this thing was, it didn't kill for food. It killed because it could, because it wanted to. And it was moving closer to Greg's pastures. Well, it wouldn't stop there. The trailer park wasn't far. I made my way down the ridge, boots sliding on loose dirt. Didn't run. Running means panic. I just moved steady, breathing slow, mind already turning over what came next. By the time I hit the pasture again, the sun was low, bleeding orange over the fence line. Greg was gone. The place looked empty. I didn't bother knocking, didn't need to. By the time I rolled back into the trailer park, the sky had gone purple. Porch lights flicked on one by one. Kids were still out by the gravel loop, kicking a half-flat ball, laughing like the world wasn't about to turn. Old man Hollis sat on his porch, radio buzzing some old country tune, tapping his foot out of sync. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. I went straight to the bulletin board by the mailboxes, that leaning plywood thing patched together with duct tape and rusted nails. Half the flyers were sun-bleached, garage sales, lost dogs, free kittens if you can catch 'em. I grabbed the stub of a pencil hanging from the string and tore a scrap of paper from the bottom tray. I wrote one line. Stay inside after 6 p.m. Bruce. I tacked it right there in the middle. And people would see it. Whether they believed it or not, that was out of my hands. As I turned, laughter cut through the still air behind me. It was Mason, Mid-20s, smart mouth, dead-end job on the night shift at the gas station. His shadow, the tall one with the rusted-out Honda that screamed louder than it drove, stood next to him, both grinning like idiots. Mason squinted at the paper on the board. "What's this, a curfew?" he said, voice dripping with mockery. His buddy jumped in, talking about the boogeyman, and they both cracked up like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Well, I didn't answer. Just looked at them, long enough for their grin to fade a little. Mason lifted his hands, palms out. "Relax, man. Just kidding." Well, they wandered off, still laughing, their voices fading into the night, talking about some weekend party like the world wasn't about to tilt off its axis. I stayed where I was, watching the paper flutter under the porch light. The wind tugged at the corners, but it held. Well, that night, I couldn't find sleep. Laid on top of the covers, jeans still on, shirt twisted under my back. The window was cracked open just enough to let the night breathe in. Crickets, frogs, that low whisper of wind threading through the trees. I drifted somewhere between awake and gone, staring at the ceiling until it all started to blur. My hand rested close to the rifle leaning against the wall, the way a man keeps his faith nearby. Then it came. Well, not a blare, more of a click, fast, sharp, like fingernails tapping glass. My eyes snapped open. It was the trap behind the shed. Well, I built it myself, a pressure plate wired to a buzzer inside. If it went off, something heavy had stepped where it shouldn't. Well, most nights, all in fact, it stayed quiet. But not tonight. I moved slowly, reached for the rifle. The trailer was a box of shadows, only the green digits of the microwave clock glowing across the room. I stayed low, silent, easing up to the window. The night outside felt a little tighter than before. And then I looked out. At first, there was nothing, just darkness and the slow hum of my own breathing. But then, movement. Right past the fence line, beyond that narrow strip of clearing between my lot and the woods, I saw them. Eyes. Red ones. Too far apart for anything natural, too high for any animal that crawled on four legs. They hovered there above the brush, motionless, watching me. The hair along my arm stood straight. I brought the rifle up halfway, the barrel resting low by my hip as I squinted through the window. Then it shifted. Something stepped into the moonlight just enough to take shape. My eyes fought the dark, but when they adjusted, well, I wish they hadn't. It looked like a dog that had been put together wrong. Long, wiry frame, ribs showing through a narrow chest. But the head, oh Christ, the head was just all wrong. Ears long and bent back like a rabbit's, snout short, too human in the way it angled down. Oh, and those eyes, burning red, glowing steady like embers waiting on wind. It was sitting upright, back legs tucked under it, front paws planted straight in front. Perfectly still. I tightened both hands around the rifle, lifted it to my shoulder, but before I could draw a bead, it turned, dropped low, slipped into the brush like it had melted into the earth. No sound, no movement, just gone. I counted. 10, 20, maybe 30, and then I moved. Quiet steps, rifle ready. The air felt thick, electric, like the night itself was holding its breath. I eased out the door, circled the trailer slowly, my boots crunching gravel just enough to remind me I was still here. The shed sat half hidden behind the lot. That's where the trap was. A heavy iron bear trap I'd picked up years back from some drifter at a swap meet who swore it could still snap a hog's leg clean off. I'd sharpened the teeth myself, rigged a pressure plate to a buzzer inside the trailer. Well, it had gone off. The trap was wide open, the hinge was bent, the latch twisted. Blood smeared along one tooth. Thick, wet, fresh. A few dark drops dotted the grass, leading toward the tree line. I didn't follow. I just stood there in the dark, listening. Nothing. Even the crickets had shut up. I cleaned the trap with an old rag, reset it with a gloved hand, and backed away slowly, eyes fixed on that black wall of trees. I didn't sleep much after that. Not really at all. The next morning, just after the sun cracked the horizon, I was sitting out front with a chipped mug of black coffee, steam curling into the cold air. The world was quiet, still half asleep. Well, until it wasn't. A scream cut through the silence, high, sharp, raw enough to make my whole body lock up before my mind even registered it. Then came the pounding of bare feet on gravel. Eli, little kid from Lot 12, 2 trailers down. Pajama pants, no shoes, tears streaking down his dusty face. I'd fixed his mom's washing machine a few weeks back, and now he was running like the devil himself was chasing him. I dropped the mug, coffee splattering across the dirt, and started toward him. His mom burst out of their trailer just as he reached her. She caught him mid-sob, clutching him tight against her chest. And that's when I saw it. The sheep. It sprawled across their front steps like it had been thrown there, torn wide open from neck to gut, inside spilling out in ropes of red and grey. The blood had soaked deep into the wood, dripping slow down onto the dirt below. One leg was twisted under at an angle no joint should bend, and the head... Sweet Jesus, the head looked like it had been smashed against the siding until the skull gave out. I didn't need a closer look. I knew what had done it. Same thing that had gutted Greg's goats. Same thing that left the deer shredded up on the ridge. Same thing that stared at me from the brush with those red, unblinking eyes. That sheep hadn't wandered there. It had been brought. Dragged from some pasture, carried across open ground and dumped right there on a family's doorstep. Not hidden, not fed on. Displayed. Like it wanted to be found. Like it knew a child would be the first to see it. That's what chilled me most. It wasn't hunting anymore. It was sending messages. It had crossed the road, slipped between trailers, walked through a park full of sleeping people, and left its calling card right in the middle of them. If it could drag a full-grown sheep that far, without a sound, without a single witness, it was only a matter of time before it decided animals weren't enough. Maybe next time it'd pick another dog. Maybe it'd pick a person. Maybe a kid. But I did not want to wait and find out. By late afternoon, I got everything ready. Dug my old cop duffel out of the back of the closet and loaded it. Heavy leather gloves, coils of nylon rope, a hunting knife that'd seen better days, a Winchester, extra rounds, a headlamp, a couple of hand warmers, whatever else felt sensible when you're heading into the dark. I drove the truck down the back road that skirts Greg's fields and rolls toward the ridge where the trees pack tight. Parked behind a choke of overgrown brush, the engine still ticking as the sun fell. By the time I climbed out, light was sliding across the treetops like poured metal, the kind of late sun that evaporates quickly. Well, the climb slowed me. Loose dirt slid under my boots, branches clawed at my sleeves. But I moved steadily, checking for fresh breaks in the brush, for the snap of a twig that said something had passed not long before. I'd walked this path many times before, memorized the turns until I found the hollow where the deer lay, or what scraps were left of it, that is. The smell hit me before I saw the clearing. Rot, thick and sour, worse than the last time. I pushed past a low bough, and there it was again. The wreck of the carcass sunk into the ground, flies so thick they hummed. I waved them off and kept moving toward the den. Part 3. Last time, I'd only glanced at it. This time I crouched, pulled the dry sticks aside and trained the beam of my flashlight down into the hole. The light cut into nothing. The pit went deeper than I'd thought. I tied the rope to a sapling, dropped a length down to mark the way back, pulled on my gloves, thumbed the safety off on the Winchester, and eased into the dark. The tunnel mouth was wide enough at first, barely. I had to crouch low to fit, boots sinking into packed dirt that gave a little with each step. The air was heavy, damp, and totally wrong. The further I went, the more the walls closed in, pressing tight until my shoulders scraped both sides. God, every sound I made, the drag of fabric, the crunch underfoot, felt too loud. I kept the flashlight aimed forward, cutting through the dark in a thin, trembling beam. The smell hit me next. Wet earth, rot, and something older, like blood turned to syrup. The tunnel curved, narrowing again before spilling into a small chamber. My boots cracked over something brittle. Bones. Dozens of them, some small, others not. Picked clean, gnawed through, scattered like trash across the floor. And then I saw it. A body slumped against the far wall, half buried in dirt. Legs gone below the knee, chewed down to the bone. One arm twisted the wrong way, ribs poking through where something had opened him up. The face was swollen, grey, the eyes rotted out. But I knew who it was. Rod McKee. Lived a town over, ran that pumpkin patch every fall, the one with the hot cider stand and the stupid painted gourds. Used to talk about buying another truck, making something of himself. I'd seen him laugh once at the Fremont County Fair, beer in hand, sun on his face. Now, he was meat under a dirt ceiling. Whatever was out here wasn't hunting for food. It wasn't killing to eat. It was dragging things back, keeping them here, playing with them. This is where it fed, where it stayed. And Rod wasn't the first. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the weight in my knees to start burning. Long enough to feel that crawling truth sink in. This thing was faster, stronger, and meaner than anything a man could face head on. Going after it with just a rifle? This wasn't bravery. It was suicide. A part of me knew it might already be behind me. I edged out the way I came in, slowly, deliberately, rifle up, eyes cutting every shadow behind me. By the time I hit the mouth of the den, the last light was bleeding off the ridge. My rope still trailed from the bushes where I'd left it. No dawdling, I yanked it in, stuffed it in the bag, and set to work. If I couldn't meet it face to face down in that hole, I'd drag it out on my own terms. I checked my kit. Jerky, a lighter, half a bottle of rubbing alcohol from the first aid pack, roll of duct tape, a rag, an empty canteen. Not much, but enough. Poured the alcohol into the canteen, shoved the rag down the neck, taped it tight so it wouldn't leak. This wasn't about blowing the place sky high. I wasn't trying to torch the whole ridge. No. I wanted to smoke it out, make the den a furnace it couldn't stand in. Poured a handful of powdered chili from an old camp sack and dumped it in. Oh, that stuff tears your sinuses just sitting near it. In a narrow hole, it'd be brutal. I gave the canteen a good shake, set the rag on fire, and lobbed it into the den. It rolled in slow. I stepped back hard. A few seconds later, a thin thread of smoke curled out, thick, grey, and bitter. I threaded around to a big oak 20 yards off, dropped down behind it, my rifle up and eyes glued to the entrance. Then I waited. 10 minutes, nothing. 15, still nothing. Oh, my throat tasted like metal by this point. By the 20th minute, something moved. A scrape from deep inside, then a wet, awful groan, like something alive and broken trying to cough itself free of mud. It came out slowly, dragging, one leg folded wrong, limping the way I'd seen before. Smoke clung to its fur and matted limbs. It wheezed as it hauled itself through the dirt, every breath a rasp. Up close, it was worse than I'd thought. Bigger than a man, but all hunched, its spine a jagged ridge beneath thin, matted skin. That blasted head, part rabbit, part dog, was streaked dark with grime and soot. And those red eyes still glowed through the smoke, dull and hungry. It paused right at the den mouth, coughing that wet, ragged breath, then turned and fixed on me. It felt personal, like it remembered my face. I didn't wait to find out. I squeezed the trigger. The Winchester slammed into my shoulder, the shot snapping across the ridge. The thing's head jerked back and it dropped like a sack of meat, hitting the dirt without a sound. And it lay still. By morning the park looked ordinary, like nothing had happened. Sun slicing the horizon, painting the gravel and sagging fences a soft orange. I parked in front of my trailer, the tires crunching, and stepped out. 2 kids were already trading a half-flat ball on the loop, laughing low. One of them was Eli from Lot 12, the boy who'd found the sheep. He saw me, hesitated, then stared at the stain on my jacket like he was trying to put 2 pieces together. We didn't ask. Kids that age pick things up that adults pretend not to see. Gave him a short nod and kept moving. The park was waking up. Porch doors were creaking, someone dragging a trash bin, a kettle whining inside a trailer, radio through a cracked window. Most of them had no idea what the night had carried out of the woods. Well, I sure as hell wasn't going to stand in the middle of the lot and tell the whole story. But the ones who knew, the ones who'd seen me walk out with a rifle slung over my shoulder, they were waiting for me. Frank from Lot 3 leaned on the hood of his truck like he always did, cigarette dangling from between 2 fingers, his eyes hard. Mrs. Leary stood on her porch in slippers and a threadbare housecoat, clutching her tea like it was the last good thing she owned. I didn't wave, didn't call out. I just looked back at them, slow and steady. In that silence, something passed between us. No words, but all the meaning in the world. The kids were safe, the yards were quiet, and that was enough. After a hot shower and a clean shirt, I climbed back into the truck and drove into town. And there were still boxes to check. The station hadn't changed much since I'd last worked there. Plain brick face, faded badge on the window, the flag out front that never flew right. The lobby had gotten a glass partition and a couple of new computers, but the hum of fluorescent lights was the same. The kid at the front desk looked like he'd just graduated from the academy and was thrilled to be important. He gave me the polite nod and asked who I wanted. Johnson, I said. He pointed toward the back with a little too much eagerness, the kind you get when life hasn't handed you a real problem yet. Johnson was where he'd always been. Same cluttered office, papers piled like little monuments, plaques with dust rings. And he'd put on weight. His hair had gone a little thin, but the second he saw me, his face lit up like we were back on patrol together. "Look who crawled back out of the woods," he said, leaning back in his chair. "What, they finally bring you in to show these rookies how to shoot straight?" Not that," I said. "I'm here to, file a report." Well, the joke died on his face. Johnson sat up, grabbed a pad, clicked his pen. I told him everything. The den in the ridge, the bones, what I'd found inside, the man's body. I told him how long it looked like it had been there, and what it said about whatever had been living up in those trees. I told him it was Rod McKee, the pumpkin farmer from the next town over. Wasn't much left of the body, but enough to know for sure. Johnson didn't interrupt, just let me lay it all out. "Yeah, any idea what did it?" he asked after a long pause. "Big wolf, aggressive, territorial as hell. Yeah, I tracked it last night," I said. "Did you kill it?" I nodded. He frowned and asked what I'd done with the body. "I burned it. Took it to the junkyard behind Miller's to set it on fire. Safer than leaving it out there," I said. He raised an eyebrow at this, the kind of look that says, "I've got questions, but I'm not asking." We'd known each other too long for small talk. He just scribbled something on the pad and nodded slowly. "Well, hell, you still got it," he said after a beat. "Barely," I muttered, exhausted. "Hey, You ever think about coming back? Well, not full-time, just help train the rookies?" he asked, clapping me on the shoulder with that same rough, calloused hand I'd remembered from years ago. Well, I left the station, but his words followed me all the way home. The part about teaching the new blood. First, it sounded like a joke, something said on a lark. But as I drove past empty fields and old farmhouses, I started thinking differently. Retirement was supposed to be quiet and slow, and for the most part it had been. Fixing fences, patching roofs, casting lines into the still water. But these last few days had reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, what it felt like to be useful in a way that actually mattered. By the time I rolled back into the trailer park and saw the kids out on the gravel, laughing and playing like nothing had ever happened, I knew I wasn't done yet. The badge wasn't on my chest, but there was still something left in me, something I could give. So you'll be delighted to know that Dubois, Wyoming is a real place, and I love it when that happens. I just had to go onto the maps and stroll around this small town. Population just a little bit under 1,000. So I don't know if any of this really happened. Of course it didn't happen. It's just a story. But it's nice to go and have a little look around when you find out that the place in the story absolutely is there and exists. And I do like it. It was the one that was dog slaughter floors. Was it last week? And everyone's like, yeah, that's just down the road from me. It really is cool to realize that these places are, the stories are grounded in reality, even if they are very fantastical. So if anyone from the Wyoming area is listening to this, has made it this far through my waffling, congratulations. And I'd love to know if you live anywhere near that, and of course if you haven't seen anything like that creature. But yeah, died off pretty quickly. One gunshot. It's a bit unusual. They usually hang around, don't they, these things? But anyway, that's it for your Sunday evening's entertainment. I will be back again tomorrow. I've got a bit of time off work, so hopefully a longer story tomorrow. Till then, my dear friends, it's just a story and you all sleep well, yeah? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.